Aloha, what's up everyone? I'm JayDreamerZ. Welcome to today's presentation. So we're going to do a presentation on the Kolbrin Bible. I was really interested once I heard about the Kolbrin Bible, and I decided to take an entire week to just go ahead and sit down and read the entire thing. And I didn't want to present all of it because it's super long. So the following presentation is going to be my notes. All of the things that I found to be anomalous, interesting, strange about the Kolbrin Bible. For those of you who don't know the history of the Kolbrin Bible, basically it says that the Kolbrin Bible is a series of manuscripts said to have been salvaged from the Glastonbury Abbey fires in 1184. Now, the Kolbrin Bible itself claims to be about 3,600 years old, which is very interesting. So this video is not going to be about, whether it's inspired or, who wrote it or whatever, just the things that I gleaned from it while I read it personally. So I also have the chat pulled up. What's up, everybody in the live stream? Good to see you all today. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right, so let's start things off. And I'm gonna try to go quickly because there's a lot to cover. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to jump in and join the conversation in the chat. So let's start things off with this verse. It says, "The great vaults of heaven were opened up to him, and he saw the everlasting fires and unconsumable powers that strove therein." I found that of interest because it's talking about various prophets of old times were shown glimpses of the heavens or the underworld, etc. This particular verse says that whenever the heavens were opened up above him, right, he saw these everlasting fires and unconsumable powers that strove within, which to me says plasma. As we've been talking about so often, the plasma above our world, that the devil is seen as descending from above and coming down into our world. You're going to see a lot of that. This book's going to talk a lot about the destroyer, the frightener, and some other things too. And this is not meant to frighten anybody. But this is just simply, the notes from the Kolbrin Bible. It says, "He felt within himself the stirring of inexpressible love, and unlimited designs of grandeur filled his thoughts. His spirit ranged unhampered through all of the spheres of existence. He was then even as God himself, and he knew the secret of the 7 spheres within the 3 spheres." So this is another thing that you'll notice throughout this Kolbrin Bible, is it talks about this euphoria, or the opposite of that, whenever people are seem to be exposed to this electrical energy or this plasma, right? Either they go insane and it drives them nuts and they become murderous against one another, or they become extremely enlightened, as if the book of the world was open to them. All right, the next one, it says, "It is known, and the story comes down from ancient times, that there was not one creation, but 2. A creation and a recreation. It's a fact known to the wise that the earth was utterly destroyed once and then reborn on a second wheel of creation." And that wheel symbolism comes up in my studies quite often too, representing the wheel in the sky that opens up, or the all-seeing eye as well. Next we have, "At the time of the great destruction of the earth, God caused a dragon from out of heaven to come and encompass her about." So it refers to this great dragon time and time again. Hey, welcome, Derek. This great dragon is the red plasma that swirls into our world. Right now, it is the Ouroboros, or it is the dragon that's wrapped around the world itself, because it's the plasma sphere that's literally wrapped around our world. So the great dragon comes down. It says, the body of the dragon was wreathed. Hold on, let me move that so we can read it. All right, cool. Scooch it over a bit. There we go. All right, cool. It says, "The body of the dragon was wreathed in a cold, bright light, and beneath, on the belly, was a ruddy-hued glow." That's interesting too, because ruddy essentially usually means like reddish in color. So it's a reddish hue dragon that's coming down from above. I believe that that's because it is ionized, possibly ionized hydrogen, right? That the plasma is hydrogen that's been ionized. So it tends to be along the red color spectrum. Oftentimes it's seen as being more of like a pinkish kind of, magenta color. All right, next up we got its passage caused great thunderings and lightnings to rend the thick darkened sky. Rend means to tear it apart. So people looked up, they saw this huge fiery magenta dragon swirling around coming down from the skies, and it was seen as, or correlated with, an event of the sky being pulled apart itself, the sky being ripped open, so to speak. And then it says, men stricken with terror went mad at the awful sight in the heavens. They were loosed from their senses and dashed about, crazed, not knowing what they did. The breath was sucked from their bodies. So at the time of this event, some people seemed to be driven insane. And in their own minds, they were sane. They were justified in whatever they did. But to everyone else, it looked like they were madmen running about. This is what I call plasma possession. It says that the breath was sucked from their bodies. I believe that's due to the depressurization worldwide of our atmosphere being pulled up into the sky. So people are gasping for air. It goes on, then it passed, leaving earth enwrapped within a dark and glowering mantle. Glowering means to glow, basically. Writhing upheavals, wrapped in a glowering mantle, which was ruddily lit up inside. That means that after this event happened, the sky turned red. That our atmosphere above was a glowing red hue to it. The bowels of the earth were torn open in great writhing upheavals, and a howling whirlwind rent the mountains apart. So there's a whirlwind that's associated with this. Oftentimes it's referred to as the tempest, and it pulled mountains apart. And then down there at the bottom, it says the wrath of the sky monster was loosed in the heavens. It lashed about in flaming fury, roaring like 1,000 thunders. So you'll hear this association as well, that the plasma dragons that come down from above, they make noise. It's electricity on a massive scale, right? So people describe it as a multitude of voices, or a multitude of running waters, or crying or screaming, or various things. It goes on. And it says, it lashed about in a flaming fury, roaring like 1,000 thunders. It poured down fiery destruction amid a welter of thick black blood. So awesome was the fearfully aspected thing that the memory mercifully departed from man. His thoughts were smothered under a cloud of forgetfulness. I interpret this to mean that it was such a terrifying event and caught most people so off guard and had them so shocked and surprised that one of our protective systems in the body, and especially with the brain, is that erases traumatic events. So this event is so traumatic that it was ripped from people's memories, essentially. And I've done videos about that, talking about worldwide amnesia in the old times. We continue on, and it says, the first earth was destroyed in this manner by calamity descending from out of the skies. The vaults. This is why we watch the skies. This is why the wise have watched the skies for thousands of years, right? Why it's so important to keep your eyes on what is going on above, because that's where our destruction comes from. It comes from above, basically, for the most part. So we watch the skies. The vaults of the heavens had opened to bring forth monsters of more fearsome than any that ever haunted the uneasy dreams of men. So not only was the sky ripped apart by this dragon, but monsters are now being said to have dropped in from the sky, just like we talk about with the phantazoids, those otherworldly creatures that descend from above and float down into our world at the time of worldwide depressurization. Oh, this is interesting too. Is that on the next one? Yeah. So men and their dwelling places were gone. Only sky boulders and red earth remained where they once were. It calls these sky boulders, which is so good to hear for me. I've done a video about where do boulders come from? Random boulders that we see lying out in the plains or strewn across mountaintops and stuff. Where do those come from? I've always speculated they were made and created up in the heavens, that they came from the sky. And the reason that they're in these strange random places just strewn about mountains and countrysides and whatnot is because they dropped in. That's where they landed. They landed from the sky. So it's interesting to see a correlation there. Only the sky boulders and red earth remained where they once were, but amidst all of the desolation, a few survived, for man is not easily destroyed. So here's some good news, So some people like to focus on all the bad aspects, and they forget when they hear the good, okay? The good is that you can survive this. The good is that others have survived this, which gives us hope that we can too, that some of us will, basically, right? So all is not lost. It's a cleansing event. It goes on to say, man found the new earth firm in the heavens fixed. He rejoiced, but also feared, for he lived in dread that the heavens would again bring forth monsters and crash about him. It goes back to the old story of Chicken Little that thinks that the sky is falling, which represents those of us who have looked into the old stories and have heard that the sky was said to have fallen, or that the sky came to land just above us, basically connecting the earth and the heavens above, and that it brought forth monsters, right? Great beasts of old, fantastic beasts, behemoth, leviathan, monsters, some people might call them dinosaurs, etc., that literally float down from the heavens above, where they come from. All right, then it goes on, it says, earth was littered with rocks and stones, which had fallen when the structure of heaven collapsed. When the structure of heaven, that would be the sky itself, fell down or was seen as getting much closer than it is now. We live during the time where the heavens have been pushed as far away as they can seem to be, right? They seem to be super far away. In reality, they're not that far away. So sometimes the conditions change in our atmosphere to allow things to be magnified, and we can see them as if they're right there in front of us. Hey, welcome, Rowena. Good to see you. I see you in the chat. Also got Vices and Virtues, who says, damn, Archaics and JayDreamerZ tonight. I'm grateful. Sweet. I'm glad you guys are getting your daily dose of live streams. All right, we move on. And it says, then came the day when all things became still and apprehensive. This is mentioned quite a few times too, this time of stillness and quiet right before the event. For God caused a sign to appear in the heavens so that men should know the earth would be afflicted, and the sign was a strange star. This has happened in the past. It's happened before, and according to the laws of cycles, it should happen again as well. That's why we keep our eyes to the heavens, and we watch for these strange signs, these anomalous comets that come that are portents of evil or harbingers of things to come, usually destruction or recreation, as I like to see it. Let's see. It says, I'm going to read this next part too. It says, the star grew and waxed to great brightness and was awesome to behold. It put forth horns and it sang, being unlike anything ever seen. That in Soundgarden talks about this in Black Hole Sun, when they say no one sings like you or something like that. When they're talking to they're singing a love song to the Black Hole Sun or to the depressurization point up there in the sky. It makes sound, and it sounds to us like singing, basically, probably very loud. Let's see. Okay, cool. So let's move on forward. And it says, God passed through the spaces of the heavens above with a mighty roar and a loud trumpeting. When the world depressurizes, when the sky and our atmosphere depressurizes, I imagine it's going to make a lot of sound, just like a pot of tea or something. You know, whenever you're cooking tea or something on the old kettles and you put it on the stove and it whistles whenever it's depressurizing or whatever, same concept, right? Sometimes it sounds like a bell, sometimes it sounds like singing, etc. It says, then came the grim, dead silence and black, red-lit twilight of doom. Great fires and smoke rose up from the ground, and men gasped for air. So, there was this time of silence, right? It's the calm before the storm. This is where it comes from. There is an archetypal storm, which is the great storm of the century. It's the great storm of the millennia. It's the storm to rid all other storms, basically. And right before that storm comes, the legends say that it becomes eerily quiet. The animals get quiet. The wind stops blowing. Even in the Bible, it makes reference to this, where it says, and I heard that there was silence in the heavens for about a half an hour. All right, we continue on. It says, then again, the tumult and the clamor ceased, and all was silent. In the quiet stillness, madness, broke out among men. Frenzy and shouting filled the air. This is also a harbinger of things to come, right? Many of the ancient manuscripts talk about just before there is a reset event that mankind loses its ever-living mind, not just diving into immorality, but causing strife with one another and going to war all over the place. Everyone goes to war and becomes very violent. Many people do. They fell upon one another in senseless, wanton bloodshed. That means killing each other for no reason, basically. Neither did they spare woman or child, for they knew not what they did. They were possessed by the plasma, by the energies that are developing right now, actually. They ran unseen, dashing themselves to destruction. Just like that movie that we recently broke down, where everyone tuned in. Remember that movie Cell, where everyone that was listening to a cell phone lost their minds and got plasma possessed, and that one girl just ran into stuff, right? People not only will, according to the legends, become murderous against one another, but against themselves too, trying to kill themselves. And it also says that it's possible that they might not even be able to die at that point in time. It goes on to say that some of the people were saved upon the mountainsides and upon the flotsam. Flotsam means stuff that's floating in the ocean. But they were scattered far apart over the face of the earth. So some of those survivors became scattered or lost tribes. It goes on to say, the earth is not for the pleasure of man. Now, some of this has nothing to do with the apocalypse. Keep in mind, these are my notes. Okay, so some of this is stuff that I wanted to share with you that really resonated with me. There's profound, deep things in here. This book talks about wizards and dwarves and enlightened ones and all kinds of interesting stuff. Basically, it's the Lord of the Rings. Like, if the Lord of the Rings and the Bible had a baby, that's the Kolbrin Bible. It's very interesting. It doesn't really omit a lot, but it's got a lot of nuggets of wisdom in there. So anyways, it says the earth is not for the pleasure of man. And this is for all of us who think that we're supposed to just be on vacation here in the earth, right? And we envy those who are rich and famous or celebrities or whatnot, who seem to have the easiest lives. This guy specifically addresses that and says the earth is not for the pleasure of man, but it is the place of instruction for his soul. We are here to learn. We are here for the edifying of ourselves. In order to do that, we have to be tested, right? In order to be tested, we have to go through tribulations and trials. It says a man more readily feels the stirrings of his spirit in the face of disaster than in the lap of luxury. So basically it's saying to me, count the tribulation that you go through as a blessing to your soul. And if it happens over and over, then it's a sign that you have something that is an opportunity for you to work on. In the midst of it, hold on, let me go back. It says, when the earth was young and the race of man still as children, that's an interesting way to put that, there were fertile green pastures in the lands where all is now sand and barren wasteland. Essentially, our world flips, right? There's an electromagnetic flip and everything in our world flips, right? Bad goes to good, good goes to bad, dry goes to wet. It all flips around. In the midst of it, so it's talking about in the midst of this fertile green pasture. Now, many times, this book references the Garden of Eden. It just doesn't call it the Garden of Eden. In the midst of it was a garden land, which lay against the edge of the earth. Eastward toward the sun rising. Now, a long time ago, there's different types of sun rising, okay? Don't think of it in modern times like, oh, it must be that way because that's where the sun rises. No. As conditions changed in our world, specifically with our atmosphere and the pressure that's inside of our world, it did different things to how the sun is seen and how the moon is seen and how the stars are seen, their locations, how they move about, and how many of them there are as well. So eastward towards the sun rising, it was called Merua. Check that out. That's pretty much Meru, right? Merua, meaning the place of the garden of the plain. It lay at the foot of a mountain, of course, Mount Meru, which was cleft at its rising. That is the split mountain. Oftentimes, I found that Mount Meru goes by the nickname the split mountain, the mountain that's been torn into two or split in half. And out of it flowed the river of Tardania, which watered the plain. From the mountain on the other side ran the river Kal. So in the middle of this garden-like place, you have a mountain and all these rivers are coming out of it. This is the Garden of Eden that it is describing. It goes on to say, Oh, well, let me say what's up to everybody in the chat. Sorry, I'm kind of out of breath. I was like trying to get a lot of stuff done before the live stream. So I ran up here so I didn't make everybody late, or so I wasn't late. Drippy, hey, what's up? Says Tafola. Jay from New Zealand, good to see you. Kali Catalyst says, I'm 10% through the Kolbrin Bible. It's so interesting. Everyone should read it. So many connections to things both Jason and Jay have talked about. I totally tend to agree with that. All right, cool. Let's continue on. It says, let's see. It's talking about that same garden, and it said that it had food and every tree that was pleasant to the sight, just like the Bible talks about in the Garden of Eden. Every herb that could be eaten and every herb that flowered was there. The tree of life, which was called Glastonbury, having leaves of gold and copper. So it's describing the tree of life, which is not I don't believe it's an actual like physical tree, like a regular tree that we see, but it's that plasma beam that shoots up and it grows. It's a spiritual tree, basically. That is both in the spirit world and the physical world at the same time, just like plasma. Having leaves of gold and copper was within the sacred enclosure. Now that phrase is used quite often, especially in the beginning portions of the Kolbrin Bible, where it talks about this sacred enclosure, right? And at first, somebody might think that it's talking about or referencing the entire earth, but I think that there's an enclosure within this enclosure. There's an enclosure within the enclosed system itself, which I've talked about many times, the anode and the cathode creating an electrical arc that surrounds and protects the Garden of Eden, basically, or Hyperborea. There too was the great tree of wisdom, bearing the fruits of knowledge, granting the choice and ability to know the true from the false. It's the same tree which can be read as men read a book. There also was the tree of trespass. Ooh, so now we've got 3 different trees. So keep these in mind. There was also the tree of trespass, beneath which grew the lotus of rapture, and in the center was the place of power. Man, so many connections with this book, where God made his presence known. Let's continue on. He was called out from his kind and brought to Marua, the garden place. So another reference to somebody being called to go to the Garden of Eden, essentially. Within the garden land, there was the sacred enclosure, another reference to that electromagnetic field that is around Hyperborea, or sometimes is around Hyperborea. The domain of Fanvar and Arua, forbidden to those of the children of God who had now come into this place. It contained the chalice of fulfillment, granting any who drank from it the realization of all things to which they aspired. None might drink from this, save for Fanvar and Arua. Also, there was the cauldron of immortality, containing an essence distilled from the fruits growing in the garden, and this guarded against mortal ills. Also another reference to the land that's at the North Pole. Sometimes it's referred to as the chalice or the cup or the grail, and as we learned when we did our Truth in Movies on Indiana Jones, the grail, the root of that word goes back to meaning of a crater. It's a crater, just like that land at the North Pole is totally a crater. It's surrounded by mountains. It's a valley land. All right, let me jump back in the chat real quick. Matthew Olivia, I'm not going to be in the chat a lot because I have a lot to read, but I'm going to jump in when I can. Says, hello, Jay, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Awesome. Well, it's good to see you too, Matthew. Good to see you. Thank you. All right, cool. Let me jump back into the presentation. We'll continue on. So it's describing the Garden of Eden, the Tree of Life, etc. And it goes on to say, about the land of the children of God was the wastelands. So about means on the outside of, or around, or encircling, right? So outside of the Garden of Eden, which is the rest of the world where we kind of live today, where the wasteland, it's called the wastelands, right? Because it doesn't, that electromagnetic barrier contains a lot of the energy that it shoots up from inside of the world at the Tree of Life. Right? It keeps it inside there because plasma is repelled by a magnetic force. So it creates another magnetic force over that island, which gives that island most of that energy. Okay. It spills out to the rest of us too, but we don't get as much as that island gets, basically. It's like a little contained system. Oh, Jen, thank you for the donation. I appreciate it. It goes on to say, let's see, the children about the land, so outside of the land of the children of God was a wasteland where the Yoslings, called the children of Zumat, which means that they who inherit death dwell. So all of the us, basically, or those who lived outside of the Garden of Eden, were too far away from that main blue beam, and they were seen as people who aged, people who got older over time. Did they age as quickly as we are now? I don't think so. I think they lived much longer, but still, even though they had much longer lives, they were seen and known to come to a point where they would die, unlike those who lived inside of those borders. Oh, Kin, thank you so much for your donation too. I appreciate you. All right, continue on. It says Dadam. So this is a person. Dadam became a servant of the sacred enclosure, where the misty veil between the realms could be penetrated. There is a mist that is said to go around Hyperborea and around the Garden of Eden. Why would there be a mist there? Possibly because of the difference in pressure, right? The pressure gradient is different, and thus the air expands and creates mist, basically veiling the entire island. All right, continuing on. The misty veil between the realms could be penetrated for all those having the blood of Arua had twin sight, an ability to see wraiths and Sith folk, Ansis and spirit beings, all the things of the other world, not clearly, but as though through a veil. So these people who were related to this person, Arua, who had come from this garden, her children had the ability, or his children, actually I think it's a girl, her children had the ability of twin sight, which means you could see, which means you were psychic, essentially. It means you could see into the spirit world. You could sense vibrations, right? You had a second sight to you. You could recognize magic. You could recognize spirit, basically. All right, continuing on. It says, those with Dadam who looked back toward the place of the garden saw bright tongues of light licking the sky above it. This is plasma or electricity. The whole being interwoven with flickering flames in many hues, many different colors of flames, right? And if there's different colors of flames, that indicates that there are different gases that are being released in that particular area that are being ionized. Those who sought to return were repulsed with a tingling ache over their bodies. So those people who had left the Garden of Eden and wanted to go back, who sought to return, were repelled. They were repulsed by a tingling ache all over their bodies, which increased to the point of severe pain as they approached. And so they were driven away. They were pushed out. They were forced to spread out and to fill the land, becoming lost tribes, etc. April, hey, check you out. What's up, everybody? Hey, let's do an emoji flood for April, who just joined to support my channel. Super appreciate all of you, by the way. Good to see you, April. All right, let's continue on too. Actually, let me be the first one. I'd like to lead by example. I'm going to send April a bunch of hearts for joining. And this is for the super chats for everybody too. Thank you all so much. I super appreciate all your support. All right, continuing on. Let's see. So they were driven away. This is a force field. Okay, this is an ancient description of a force field, a very accurate description of a force field, basically, right? So that force or that energy inside of us or inside of those who had left or had been kicked out of the garden, that energy had changed. It no longer matched the energy of the field itself, so they're repelled by it, right? Maybe if they change their energy, they could get in. Who knows? All right, continuing on, it says, but Hubaris instructed Herthu in the ways of the other world. He taught him concerning the 3 rays from the central invisible sun. Whew, man, isn't that something that we talk about on my channel like a lot, right? 3 beams, those 3 beams, the anode, the cathode, and the central Mount Meru. Boom. He taught him concerning the 3 rays or 3 beams from the central invisible sun. Exactly how we talk about with the plasma apocalypse, the depressurization point, the hollow earth entrance, etc., and so on and so forth. Ken, good to see you, Ken. And by the way, for those of you who are already members, every once in a while, like it allows you to do like almost like a super chat where your chat's highlighted. It's a benefit of being a member. For some reason, it says that you're a brand new member, but you're not. So just ignore it if it says you're brand new. But yes, thank you, Ken. Let's put you up there. Boom. It says welcome, April. Right on. All right, continuing on. We have a lot to cover today. It says, it's talking about quickening of the soul and the substances outflowing from the Godhead, that the strong soul is transformed and molded to the soul's desire. But the weak soul is not its own master. It's flabby, it's unstable, and it's pulled into a state of distortion by its own vices. In the afterlife, there is unbounded joy for the entry of a noble soul. It will glow with splendor. So I like this because it's talking about souls glowing. Soul glow. That just totally came to my mind. But we've talked about this. We've mentioned this many times that there are otherworldly beings or the ancient titans or giants of old. Rumor has it that they could see our souls, that some of these animals that we've gone, I'm gonna talk about some animals too. I'm gonna do another presentation where I talk about Lady Liberty and stuff like that, and these animals, these ancient phantazoids of old that could see into the electromagnetic spectrum, and therefore they could see our auras, they could see our souls, which I think one day we'll be able to do too, some of us. All right, continuing on, it says, let's see, they're talking about some people who went to a place of initiation, a small cave entered through a long narrow passage that was closed off by a heavy door and lit by a fire already prepared, a fire which burnt tardily with a blue flame, right? Oftentimes they're talking about these cavernous inner earth entrances, or sometimes it's actually Mount Meru, but there are many other ones around the world too. And they burn with a blue flame. It is almost always, right? I've found that it is many times often a blue flame. The reason that it's a blue flame is because that is that blue beam of energy or light that is coming up from inside of the earth. I speculate that the red plasma is because it is hydrogen, ionized hydrogen, and that the blue is ionized oxygen, possibly. Although there are other gases that can turn those colors too, but those are my top two. It goes on to say that a son of Herthu would lead their sons out of Crocassus, and his sons and their sons would continue westwardly. Keep these directions in mind, right? There's esoteric directions too. Towards Hesperus, just like the Hesperides, right? Which are said to be on the western extremities of our world, at the ends of the earth, meaning the land of spirits. There is a land that has more energy than the rest of the world, and therefore the spirits or the energy you're able to see them manifest in front of you. It's electricity, essentially, right? That they would meet their final destiny. He told them that there would be a great bloodletting when brother would fight against brother, father against son, and that this would be the planting of the center pole. That is the axis mundi, the axis of the world, the pole, the beam, etc. That comes up out of Mount Meru, the plasma volcano. Whichsoever of them shall remove their father's great weapon. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, so this is a story. This is the sword and the stone story, basically. Okay, I've seen many references to this. Another great ancient sword and the stone story, now that I think about it, comes from the book of Joshua, which talks about Moses and where he got his staff and stuff. That's another really good sword and the stone story. But this one talks about this father who didn't know which of his two children he should allow to inherit his kingdom. So he spoke to his children. He basically took a sword and he put the hilt of the sword into cement, okay? And then he allowed the cement to cool. And then he had a challenge with the blade sticking up out of the sword. And he said, whoever can pull the sword out of the stone and all they could touch was the blade part, they could be the king. So this says, whichever of them shall remove their father's great weapon from this stone, so he frees it and grasps the hilt, shall become my lawful heir. So they try in many different ways and stuff. And then one guy uses wisdom in order to accomplish the task. He breaks up the stone and he totally just breaks all the cement and takes the sword out of it, right? It goes on to say, there are among men those who are the children of the beast, and they are different people. Now, I don't believe this is talking about physical attributes, about any kind of race within humanity. This is talking about a seed of spirit that lies inside of us, that influences us, not influenza, that influences us in our choices to do selfishly or to do selflessly, right? There were among those men who were the children of the beast. That is those people who have a remnant of that red plasma from above. I'm just going to call it that, right? And it incorporates itself into this world exactly like. Now there's more people who are filled with that red plasma spirit than there are blue plasma spirit in the times that we live in now, because there is no blue plasma shooting up into the sky and being contained and filling our world with goodness and purity and magic and bringing about the golden age. But that will flip. The time will come when that will change. But all of that plasma finds homes. It finds homes called bodies, basically. And there are those who are a remnant of the tree of life plasma or spirit, and those who are a remnant of Cthulhu, essentially. Like, they have that red worm. You know what I mean? All right. Anyways, a race of men came out of the cold Northlands. That would be a reference to Hyperborea. They were under a wise father, and above them was the grand company, which later withdrew in disgust. The race was the children of God, and they knew the truth and lived in the midst of peace and plenty. The children of men about them were wild and savage, clothed in the skins of beasts. They lived like beasts. Even more wild were the men of Zumat who lived among them. So basically everyone outside of the Garden of Eden, they were forced to just survive, however they could or whatever. They didn't have all of the benefits and byproducts of that blue beam magic as much as the people who lived in the center of the world did. Goes on to say, the right of a man to mate was decided according to his standard of thought, his uprightness, the manner in which he upheld the code and tradition of his dealings with man and women. I just like that. I just think that's great that they didn't just allow anybody to have babies. I mean, I don't know if they allowed it or disallowed it, but it was kind of like the rule of thumb, or it was their code or whatever, that if you wanted to procreate, first you had to prove that you were a decent addition to the world, because they didn't want you to bring in more additions that are all messed up if you're all messed up. You know what I mean? And of course, that's subject to people's opinions and whatnot, but it seems, like it could be a good idea. It goes on to say, the race which could properly channel the forces contained within itself was ready to control the forces beyond itself. So it's talking about this race of people who just left and were dispersed from this northern area, this northern island, basically. And they were known to be able to use their chi or their spirit or their aura or their chakras or whatever. They were workers of magic, essentially. They mastered the force that was within them. And in doing so, they were able to manipulate and master those forces that were without or outside of them. It goes on to say, then it happened that one man became arrogant in the strength of his manhood and pride of place. His thoughts inclined toward himself rather than toward the welfare of the people, and he scorned the old ways. The reason I highlighted this is because this one person gave birth to, either by idea or physically, and brought us to where we are today, where most people feel this way. From my perspective, okay, most of the world seems to be in a fallen state where they don't acknowledge the old ways. If anything, they say all of the old ways are lies, and that they don't believe in any of the traditions or the old stories or anything. It goes on to say that the code and tradition is the pillar of our people. It says interesting usage of words, and the pillar may not be struck with impunity, though it be strong, and one blow will not damage it. Many blows will bring down even the stoutest pillar. A blow left unheeded encourages another. A deed disregarded is a deed encouraged. So it's symbolic, right? It's talking about us and how it's giving suggestive advice to civilizations in the future. And basically what they're recommending is, hey, it's exactly what the Bible says when it says, don't bear false witness. That means don't put up with evil. Not just, don't do evil yourself, but you're held just as guilty if you allow evil, if you allow it, instead of calling it out and saying, hey, that's wrong, that's messed up, don't do that. And handling your house, basically. So I thought that was pretty good. And plus it, references the pillar and stuff. It goes on to say, men stand beneath the great dome of the night skies. Obviously, I wanted to include that one because I think that there is a dome that gives us our night skies and separates us from the glories of the heavens and the brightness that is above us. And that's why we live in a dark city. Anything else there? Let's see. No, we're going to keep on going. Oh, it does say that they became dismayed at their own smallness, but they were reassured by some words and stuff from the ancient times. One day people will realize how small they truly are, right? And it's just in comparison to the macrocosm, because if we compared ourselves to the microcosm, we would see how great we really are, right? All things are connected and it's fractal. Pardon me. It goes on to say, let me have some grape juice. All right. It goes on to say, we are taught that we will live forever, and this is true. But it is equally true that no moment of life must be wasted, for each hour and day on earth is a shaping for the future. We are the inheritors of a portion of time. We can dissipate it on futile things, or utilize it to our everlasting benefit. I love this. This is exactly what I've been saying for years when I say there is never a moment when you are not actively changing the world. Every one of you is actively partaking in the shaping of the future. You're time travelers. You're changing things right now. Every tiny little thing that you do, even if nobody sees it, no matter how small, no matter how insignificant it might seem, it is connected to everything else. It's going to touch another domino, and that domino is going to touch another domino, and it becomes the butterfly effect. It goes on and says, in olden times, there spawned great monsters and beasts in fearful form. Now, the Kolbrin Bible is not hesitant to talk about the very fact that monsters existed, right? Very plainly, it will tell you monsters definitely existed. Here's what they were. With frightful gnashing teeth and long rippled claws, an elephant was but a rat in comparison to them. These were huge. These were great beasts of old. Then, because of heavenly rebellion and turmoil and the terror overwhelming the hearts of men, the Great One hardened the face of the land, which had become unstable, and the beasts were changed to stone. So those things that were so grand and so large, like the titans of old and the great beasts or the Titan-class phantazoids, they were one of the first creatures that were turned to stone. Smaller creatures tended to survive because they had places to hide from the electrical charges that were coming from above. Titans, giants, huge creatures and stuff don't have a lot of cover. They don't have a lot of places where they can go hide, right? Unless they can find an exceptionally large opening in the earth. All right, continuing on, it says, then, because of heavenly rebellion and turmoil, the terror overwhelming the hearts of men, the Great One hardened the face of the land, and the beasts were changed to stone. This was before times when the destroyer still slumbered in the upper vaults of heaven. The destroyer is sleeping just on the other side of the sky right now, okay? It's not on its way here from super far away, and one day it might get here, and the Anunnaki are going to jump off and parachute down or whatever. According to this, it's saying the destroyer, the frightener, it goes by so many different names, okay? Because this is seen as an ancient god of old. It's sleeping. It's right there. It's just beyond the sky, slumbering in the upper vaults of heaven, right? Not in the far reaches of space, even though it probably is there too, but if there is such a thing. All right, continuing on, it says, thus it is written in the record of Beltshira. In those days, the people were wicked, and though the wise men among them gave many warnings of the wrath to come, they would not listen. Such is the way of the wicked. So there are many people in this day and age, during a time that many are starting to realize is an awakening of sorts, where people are coming to the truth of this cyclical ancient wisdom that our world goes through, these cataclysms that are from time to time. It happens, and then people forget about it, and it happens again, and they forget again, right? But just before the end, wisdom is granted to some of us, right? Some people in this world, just like it's the amplification of energy in our world, right? Just like evil's being amplified, so is goodness, and so is so are those things that fall onto the path of the truth seeker, right? If you seek after the truth, you'll find it. And in these days, that itself is being amplified as well. Things are charging up for a great event. It goes on to say, events of the moment cannot be weighed in the moment, but can be assessed only by the judgment of years. Only eternity knows whether this or that is good or bad, a gain or a loss, right? Everything seems detrimental in the moment. Everything seems like a huge mountain. It's the most important thing ever in the moment. But when we step back and take a look of how that thing or that event affected the ripple of time and what it touched going forward, you might see something as being the best thing ever, but it had dire consequences, right? It turned out in this long spectrum of time, maybe to not be such a good thing. However, who's to say, right? It depends on how far down the timeline you can look, and the timeline is infinite. It is written in the great book of the Firehawks that Earth was destroyed twice. Once altogether by fire, and once partially by water. The destruction by water was the lesser destruction and came about in this manner. So this is referring to the old flood, right? It's also talking about how these things are cyclical. It goes on to say, there's a king speaking, and he says, "Behold, the years are shortened, and the hour of trial draws nigh. The shadow of doom approaches this land because of its wickedness." Now, two things are going on here, right? Two harbingers that we can look for in our time, right? Are the years being shortened? I say yes. And the hour of trial will draw near. And then, of course, moral degradation, right? Mankind falls into complete wickedness, and it goes into like the association with the apocalypse and wickedness of man, like hand in hand, all throughout this book, right? All right, continues on and says, "Then with the dawning, men saw an awesome sight. There, riding on the great black rolling cloud, came the destroyer, newly released from the confines of the sky vaults, and she raged about the heavens, for it was her day of judgment. The beast with her opened its mouth and belched forth fire, hot stones, and vile smoke." So this is all happening in the sky, remember. It covered the whole sky above, and the meeting place of earth and heaven could no longer be seen. So what this is the sky opening up, plasma coming out, interacting with all of the chemicals and gases in our atmosphere and all the other things that are already up there in the sky right now. And how it looks and appears to mankind down here on the surface. Continues on and says, "The storehouses of the winds burst their bolts asunder. So storms and whirlwinds were loosed to hurl themselves upon the earth." So I want to mention that because I have heard some people, that have the opinion that there is not going to be very strong winds during the apocalypse. Everything I've ever read says the opposite of that, basically, including the Kolbrin Bible. It mentions these strong winds, the tempests that blow, all the little tornadoes that spring up and sprout forth. All right. The storehouses of wind were burst open, hurling themselves upon the earth. In the seething waters and howling gales, all buildings were destroyed. Trees were uprooted and mountains were cast down. There was a time of great heat. And then came a time of bitter cold. This is another thing that you'll start to see the closer we get to the day of the unveiling or the apocalypse, is that the weather goes to extremes very quickly, right? It gets like super, super cold, and then very soon after that it becomes extremely hot, to a point where people are not used to it. We're used to more of a transition with the seasons and whatnot, but that's not so in the times leading up to the apocalypse. There was a time of great heat, followed by a time of bitter cold. The waves over the waters did not rise and fall, but seethed and swirled. And there was an awful sound above, right? So the water starting to swirl, following those vortices or those vortexes of energy, etc. Also, it could be that that the barriers that are underneath our world, separating us from the underworld, that those go into flux, and that those create little holes, basically opening up, allowing the waters to start pouring in and stuff, creating whirlpools. It says, "The pillars of heaven were broken and fell down to earth." So this was a time whenever the earth had pillars of light, beams of light. sky trees. You could call them whatever you want to call them, but they are basically seen as something that comes out of the earth and touches the sky. And it's a straight line. It might turn into, tree form or whatever. But the earth had many of these, right? There's one main one. There's the two witnesses on either side. There's the four spirits surrounding the main one. There's all kinds of various inner earth cavernous openings where that blue beam, that inner earth energy will come out of, basically. And those were seen as sky pillars, or the pillars of heaven. It says the sky vault was rent. That means torn and broken. That's the sky. The sky is broken and torn apart. The whole of creation was in chaos. The stars in the heavens were loosed from their places, so they dashed about in confusion. Now, if the stars were as modern academics teaches, it's difficult to apply these types of verses that talk about stars falling to earth or stars moving around and scattering around out there. Mainstream academics, I don't feel their version fits or is aligned with the ancient descriptions. Pardon me. All right, continuing on. Wise were our fathers in olden times, and wiser our fathers' fathers. So I like this because it just points out that the further back in time we go, in general, people were more wise, which means that we are getting less wise as time moves forward until we get to a point where it's basically the movie Idiocracy, which is kind of what it is today, right? And they say the opposite. They say, oh, we're getting smarter. We've got all this technology. Mankind is really advancing, etc. No, we're not, okay? Your average person out there doesn't know how to make a cell phone. Your average person out there barely knows how to, if anything, support themselves. They can't make fire. They can't purify water. They don't, you know what I mean? They can't do anything in and of themselves. It is small, specific regions or people that are coming up with this technology for the rest of us to use, right? So it's not that we're getting smarter collectively or anything. Technology is coming out of this era, but that's not a sign of our intellect. That's not a sign of us collectively, basically. The ancient writings worldwide indicate that the prophecies all say that mankind would diminish in status, in stature, in status, in length of life, in morality, in everything. It's entropy, basically. All right, jumping into the chat real quick. Oh, thank you, Emmanuel. Super appreciate it. You saw the Euphrates River video? Right on. Thanks for stopping by. All right, let's continue on. It goes on to say, one moment. All right, it's talking about a character named Hermaintar. And it says that Hermaintar drew forth the great key, shaped like a sword, but like no other sword, for it could not be gazed upon for more than a moment without blindness striking the beholder. That's because it's light, right? The sword is always light. The sword and light is always the truth, right? The sword of light, or the blue beams of the world, right? The inner earth energy imparts wisdom to us. It connects us. It connects to us telepathically. And the earth knows everything about the earth. If you stare into this light, you become blind. Yet, within its strange scabbard, it harmed no one. See, that's what I like. That to me is a reference to cold plasma, right? Some people might think that just because I talk about plasma all the time, that's the type of plasma that will burn you or shock you or something like that. It's not always the case. There are many forms of plasma, one of which is called cold plasma. And cold plasma you can touch. You could be in it. It could, if you had a big enough source, you could stand in it, like in Quantum Leap, and just be rejuvenated by all this blue light shooting up around you, right? And it continues to say, it was a many-hued weapon, and it's talking about plasma of different colors. All right, continuing on. It goes on to say, in the midst of the waters grows the plant of eternity, the forbidden tree, of which you and all men may not eat, a fruit which was stolen by the serpent of ancient times. Partake of it now, and you will suffer everlasting changelessness, the most dreadful of all fates. Everlasting changelessness. So it was seen as a blessing to some and a curse to others, right? If you cannot change, right, then you're basically, that's like the worst form of torment, right? Because for those of us who are, or for those beings, I won't include myself. I would like to try to be more humble. But for those beings who are more enlightened, we'll say, they understand that change is growth, and they seek to continuously grow, to always grow, to always change, to always develop, right? You're never the same person. Not one moment ever. You're constantly changing. So by partaking of this fruit and not being able to change, aka to grow old or whatever, they saw that as not a good idea, because they wanted to be able to complete their class here in the world on earth and then graduate and go to those other heavenly spheres or realms, etc. Goes on to say, once men could pass easily from one sphere to another, and then came the misty veil. Now men must pass a grim portal to span the spheres. And as the generations pass, this too will be closed off to men. The secret of the substances which, compounded together, become the horse which can bear men here, will remain with those who know the mysteries. But these will become even harder to teach. As the ages roll by, there will be many false mysteries, and perhaps the path will become closed or the way lost. That's a pretty interesting one too, talking about how men used to be able to traverse into different realms. There's a time for travel, basically in the fractalverse. Especially in our local region, there's a time when the doors are opened and people can freely come and go, right? So we make friends with those creatures and animals and beings that live under our world because they're coming and going, we're coming and going, and as well the sky itself. There's creatures that will come and go when those doors are opened. It continues on and says, as the sun gives light and fire spreads the heat, as the flower radiates perfume, so does the central light give forth a vaporous, unseeable glow. Boom. And this our fathers called the breath of God. A vaporous, unseeable glow. A vaporous glow, just like the sodium vapor canopy that we talked about in some of the other videos, right? Very interesting, that sodium vapor canopy that pops up, or sodium vapor lamps. There are 3 great spheres, and that containing the earth is held together by the great glow outflowing from the God of gods. That part of the great glow, which is light and contains life, is called mana, or manna, right? That tree of life, that blue beam that shoots up, it's moving at incredible speeds, right? And it's interacting with the nitrogen in the atmosphere and the oxygen and other things too. And it's just like rain, right? It will actually rain down manna, or rain down pieces of that God's body. Some people will see it like that, right? So that they are able to eat little pieces of that God, or its tears, or its sweat, or, whatever you want to call it. Basically, it's slime. Okay. It's slime that dries up into little wafers, and it's inundated with positive electrical attributes. Continuing on, it says, trees are not things to be lightly dealt with, for they move the winds which cross the face of the earth and generate these in great forests of the north and the south. The slaughter of a tree is no less wrong than the slaughter of an ox or a sheep, for the same breath of life is in each. Therefore, never bring them low wantonly. What does that mean? That means trees are our friends. Don't just go cutting them down just because you can, right? If we are to do this, I think of the movie Avatar, whenever that girl saved Jake Sully from, little demon dogs or whatever they were, and she had to kill it. And he was like, yeah, high five, good job. And she's like, this is not a good thing. Not a good thing at all, right? She's very serious about it. That's how I am with the trees, basically. Also, it breaks my heart to see people giving trees haircuts all over the place, like, trimming them or whatever, just for the sake of design, because they don't like how they look when they grow. You know what I mean? Anyways, that's just me. No, that is me. All right, continuing on. As a man who walks with a lamp at night is attacked by those who lurk in the darkness, so are enlighteners who seek to bring the light into the gloom of ignorance. They are attacked by those whom it would reveal in their true likeness. So these are things that you can expect to happen. And it's a sign that you're on the right course, right? It doesn't always mean that you're on the right course. Everyone believes that they're right in their own eyes. Everyone likes to justify the things that they're doing, basically, right? But if you are walking in the light, the dark tries to attack it because it exposes the darkness, all of the darkness, right? Goes on to say, so these words are given just for those sincere seekers who are aware of their own shortcomings and ignorance. These will be people whose thoughts are not smothered by prejudice, who are not set in their opinions, for who among men is the most confirmed in his opinions, who states things in the most assertive manner and talks with the loudest voice? Is it not the most ignorant? I will not let the sincere seeker go unguided. I am the light on the path. So what this is saying is be cautious of people who are boisterous and very loud and very confident of facts and empirical evidence and planting their flags of truth and claiming to have ultimate knowledge or whatnot. Be humble, you know. The truth comes to those of us who do a self-diagnostic, and we have feelings and we feel bad. We're sensitive from time to time, and we recognize the things that we've done that don't make us feel good, and we seek to right those wrongs. That's what sets us apart. Continuing on, it says, if you have not been found wanting in the weighing, that is the weighing of the feather of Mahat, right? Then, or the weighing of the soul, really, against the feather of Mahat, or against the spirit of goodness. If you have not been found wanting in the weighing, then step forward boldly and without fear, for the mouth will close to let you pass. I forgot what that's in reference to, basically, but it has something to do with being allowed entrance into a better place, and it's based on your soul. It's based on your energy, your vibration on the inside, and what that looks like. You know what I mean? We'll come across it, but basically there's many references to what the spirit is, what the soul is, according to the authors of the Kolbrin Bible. And it talks about how the body is developing the soul, just like an egg. The shell of the egg is developing the embryo inside of it, right? That our bodies are developing a shape. What we look like on the inside is continuously changing as well, depending upon what we choose to do with this avatar. You know what I mean? So I thought that was kind of cool. All right, moving on. It says, the great dome of heaven rises above, and no man knows its limitations. That's another reference to the heavenly barrier, the firmament above, the dome of the earth, etc. Continuing on, it says, heaven and the many heavens beyond heaven, earth and the many earths that are beyond earth, are held in the thoughts and the power of God. Whew, God, when I read that, I was like, what? I had to step back and take a break for a moment, because this is an ancient way of describing what I call the fractal verse, right? For, I don't know, maybe a couple of years now, I've been talking about the fractal verse and how there are alternate Earths. It's not all these different planets that are super different or whatever, but there are copied and pasted of Earth, our world. Another one over there, another one over there. There are many different Earths. There's infinite Earths all over the place within the mind of God. And each one of these is a little school that has a specific agenda. It has a specific course of study, basically. And they're basically copies of one another's, Earth after Earth after Earth, within the mind of God, within the fractal verse itself. And it says, from Ramakui to the from Ramakui of the 7 cities, land of copper. This is very interesting. If you go back and check out my video I did about the 7 mountain mandate, about the 7 mountains, right? Those have a direct correlation with copper mountains, with an abundance of copper up towards the northern regions of our world. And it says, of the 7 cities, land of copper, came the people of light. And they brought with them out of their transparent temples the light that shines when darkness fails without being lit. It's a light that shines without, it's not fire, basically. They're trying to I think that they're trying to describe plasma, basically. And those people who came from the North Pole were inundated with electrical energy. Their souls were glowing out of their eyes lit up. Sometimes you could see their auras and stuff. They were the illuminated ones, quite physically. They were actually beings of light that radiated light. You know what I mean? That's because they lived in the light for so long. They lived with and among the light, I should say. And they brought that with them. They were able to bring the light with them. They were able to make plasma, basically, and technology with that plasma. Continues on and talks about the day of the destroyer. All right, so here we go back to the plasma apocalypse and the opening in the sky. Becca Davis just gave me $10 and a super chat sticker. Thank you, Becca. Super appreciate you. And Red Cloud Rider says, yes, Jay, this is the good stuff. Right on. Thank you. I super appreciate it. I'm going to leave Becca's up there for just a second because I super appreciate it. All right. It says the day of the destroyer, the day of the destroyer. Can't talk. It will come in 100 generations, as it is written in the great vault. I don't know if that's a reference to the sky or to something else, but here is whenever, for all the people who are like, when's the end coming? When's it going to happen or whatever? Well, according to the Kolbrin Bible, it's 100 generations from when it was written. Now, some people, be careful in your calculations because generations are a different length of time the further in time you go back. Okay. Today, a generation lasts for a different amount of time than it did 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. Right. So include that in your calculations if you're somebody that's into that. Continuing on, it says, when men and women meet in one likeness, the fiery heralds will appear in the darkness of the sky vault. So quite often, all throughout the Kolbrin Bible, it talks about how there's this flux in energy that masculine and feminine start to become neutral. They start to look just like one another, right? And that manifests in our world physically right before these events happen. So it's saying this is also another harbinger that the fiery heralds, that's the plasma, will appear in the darkness of the sky vault. Those are the plasma fireworms or whatever, spiraling down into our world. In spiritual matters, the most important is that each man should awaken his own soul, a task from far more difficult than it may appear, but for which Earth is the dedicated instrument. Chris Oxford. Hey, welcome, Chris Oxford. So what is this saying? It's saying that it is not your job to go around waking up somebody else. Like, it's not for you to go wake someone else up. It's for them to wake up when they are well rested, when they have had their sleep. You know what I mean? So it does talk about that. However, I will also balance that out by saying that in the Kolbrin Bible, it also, I remember, does go on to talk about the importance of sharing things with those who would listen to you, right? So for those who do have an ear to hear, for those who are hungry with what you're cooking, go ahead and feed them, offer it to them, but not to force feed other people, basically. Hey, what's up, Hector? Good to see you in the chat. All right, I'm going to move forward. It goes on to say the nesting place of the nest burning bird, that's a reference to the phoenix, was among the Mothbenim, or Motbenim, eastward of Egypt. But among the treasures of Egypt was one of its eggs, the egg of the phoenix. The egg symbolism represents Mount Meru, the great egg that needs to crack open and the blue beam comes out, etc., where the beam is now lying dormant inside of our world. The egg, the pearl, and the jewels were safeguarded in a dark cave upon an island called Mishput, which was set in the middle of a lake called Sedana. Now, I wish I had it pulled up already, the land at the North Pole. Some of you can already see it being painted in your minds. You know what I mean? This is where the phoenix lives. Okay. So for those of you who are, following archaics, or you're looking into studying what the phoenix is, where does the phoenix come from? What is the phoenix event, etc. I will say my interpretation of it, this is me on my channel, but my interpretation is that the phoenix is the blue beam that shoots up out of the world, out of Mount Meru, out of the plasma volcano, and then it takes shape in the sky, seen as a thunderbird or a phoenix, etc., spreading out its arms, etc. Hold on one moment. It says the nesting place of the nest-burning bird, the phoenix, was among the Mothbenim. So Mothbenim means sons of Mot, or it could also be translated as Mahat, the sons of Mahat, possibly, eastward of Egypt. But among the treasures of Egypt was one of its eggs. Check this out. So it's the egg, the pearls, which we've talked about many times. Almost every Truth and Movie episode has some kind of reference to the pearl, right? Whether it be the black pearl, green pearls, shining pearls, glowing pearls, etc. That dream movie that we watched, there was these glowing pearls that they had to get, right? They're not talking about oysters and little rocks that grow inside of the oysters. They're talking about ball lightning. They're talking about plasma that forms little balls or whatever, sprites and spirits and fairies and stuff. Let's see. So the egg, the pearls, and the jewels. Now, jewels are also in this dark mountain because all that electrical energy and heat and other things that are happening in there, they create precious stones, diamonds, gems, rubies, emeralds especially. So it's also seen as the Cave of Treasures or Cave of Wonders. And it's set in the middle of a lake, just like we show on the old North Pole maps, right? Mount Meru is, boom, right there in the middle of a crystal lake at the middle of the world. So that's where it should be. In the waters of the lake were fearsome monsters. Keep this in mind. Some people are planning on making trips one day. I think there's going to be an exodus of people that try to get to the North Pole. The Kolbrin Bible refers to it constantly. It also talks about how not everyone who goes on that trip makes it. That there are people in the midst, and some people get angry with each other, and there's fights that break out and all kinds of interesting stuff. But in the waters of that lake, in the middle of the world, were fearsome monsters, part beast, part fish. These are sea monsters, which we've talked about on my channel many times too. They were written and drawn on ancient maps that were commissioned by kings and queens under the penalty of death, which meant that they were accurate, that they accurately depicted and saw sea monsters in various regions. On the shores of the lake dwelt the shape-shifting priests, the guardians of the treasures. Now, I think that this is a reference to the 4 witnesses that are talked about in the Bible that surround Mount Meru, or the throne of God, basically, and how they're shapeshifters and they appear to be various animals or have animal parts and stuff. Continuing on, it says, on the eve of the feast of sheep slaying, that is Passover, on the eve of the feast of sheep slaying, the lake boats were prepared for the annual pilgrimage to the island. So check this out. People made a pilgrimage to the island that has the dark cave, aka Rupas Nigra, or the Black Rock, right? They made these pilgrimages there. This is why they do this still in Mecca today, where they go to the Black Rock and they walk around in a circle around it. People did that in the ancient land at the North Pole as well. They made pilgrimages. When they had gone too far, they went back. Why do they go back? Because they're regenerated. Right? They're going back to be blessed. They're going back to receive a blessing from the earth itself, to partake in that spiritual energy. Among these was the great boat of Arab, kept in memory of the day when the scorcher of heaven rose with the sun and earth was overwhelmed. From this boat, the sacrificial lambs were offered to the water monsters. So there's a couple of interesting things there. One, the correlation of the sun with the earth being scorched, something we have talked about before, how the sun has the ability to scorch the earth. And I'm not talking about a blast from 1 billion miles away or anything like that, as modern academics describes it. Zeke, hey, welcome to my channel, Zeke. I'm talking about a nearby body that is, its focus is being concentrated and concentrated, getting smaller and smaller, which is making it hotter and hotter, which is lessening the amount of daylight that we have, right? And the earth being scorched by the sun. And the water monsters. Okay. So people gave offerings to the water monsters. They appeased them. They fed them. Basically, they're like, here you go. Boom. And they fed them. So the water monsters didn't want to bite the hand that feeds them. They wanted to continue receiving sustenance from us, the humans or whatever. So we tossed them, animals or whatever, and they were satisfied. This is called expiation, just like in the movie The Mist. Right? How we talked about how there's that crazy lady that's like expiation. She wants to sacrifice everybody to the mist monsters. Same type of deal. Continuing on. Oh yeah, that's right. Alvino Perez is in the chat and says, Jay, don't the old maps have pictures of sea monsters? Yeah, many of them do. Many of them do. Continuing on. It says, they came from the temple of the lake, dedicated to the bright bearded one. Okay, so the bright bearded one, right? The blue beam shoots up from the axis mundi, from the center of the world. It goes up to the depressurization point, which is right above it, which is this red circle in the sky, right? Now that red circle in the sky, every other apocalypse, it's seen up there in the sky. It's another sun. It's a sun up there in the sky. It's one that doesn't really move. It just kind of goes up and down, I guess. I can't remember. But it's another sun. It's seen as being, that's why Soundgarden makes a whole song called The Black Hole Sun. That's what it's about. But plasma spills out from that opening, right? It spills out from time to time, and it looks like a tongue, like some god of the heavens is mocking You know how Jim Carrey talked about the all-mocking tongue or something like that? That's literally what that is. Okay, it's the tongue of the destroyer. It's the tongue that is a sign that things are about to get funny or change or whatnot. That tongue sometimes is seen as a beard. Sometimes it's upside down. Instead of people seeing the face and that plasma coming downward, actually, I'm sorry, sometimes I see it as a beard coming out, or sometimes I see it as a tongue. Sometimes it's seen as a horn coming out or whatnot. It looks like different things in the sky. And then it says, they came from the temple of the lake that was dedicated to the bright bearded one, that is a reference to plasma, who once saved the earth from destruction through fiery hail by making a third round. So this is talking about various plasma apocalypses that have happened in the past. Now the cave on the island was protected from men by the spirit of Mot, also could be Mahat, right? Who had died there in days long forgotten, and the priests guarded its entrance. But Hiram did not fear the spirit of Mot, for it could do no harm to anyone who carried upon his body the same blood scar as Mot had borne. So what this is saying is if your energy matches that of the earth energy, aka Mahat or Mot, etc., you're fine. It doesn't harm you. It doesn't touch you. You actually are benefited by it. Goes on to say, I am Locus, son of the firebird. So this guy's talking. He calls himself Locus, which is akin to Loki. I believe this is a wizard. I think this is the story of the wizard who's traveling with this like future king or something. He says, son of the firebird. That's another reference to the phoenix. So somebody who had come from the northern lands. I am Locus, son of the firebird, and physician to the king of Tyre, or Tyr. I have traveled from afar to this place that I might hear the wisdom of the dead. I came to talk with my soul in solitude. Oh, I know what this is. Okay. So there was this guy who was cast out. He took off to like a place where where the rocks make sounds, somewhere towards the north. They said that the rocks sing, basically, and that they call that the voices of the dead. But not to fear because they can't actually do anything to you. So anyways, there's this weird wizard guy, and his name is Locus, or also the same as Loki. Son of the firebird. Lok, or that root word, Lok. Hey, Moss to the Flame. Hey, welcome. Good to have you. Thanks for your support. All right. Oh, also, Ace0 just subscribed too. Right on. Welcome, Ace. So check this out. The root of that name, Locus, is Luke. Or lok, sometimes loop with a P, and it means bright, it means shining, it means light, basically. Oz means strong, so it means strong light. I am the strong light, the son of the firebird, or the son of the phoenix. All right. Goes on, it says, Lord, he comes from beyond the land of elephants, in the place where the earth tips over. Now, some people might associate that with where you think elephants come from these days, right? Usually just being like thoughts of Africa or India might come to mind, right? But there's another place where elephants are said to have originated from. The ancestors of the elephants, the great, often hairy elephants of old times, mastodons, woolly mammoths, etc. They came from inside the earth, according to the legends. He comes from the place beyond the land of elephants, in the place where the earth tips over. When you go inside of the earth and you go into the underdark, or you go into the upside down, or whatever you'd like to call it. Continuing on, it says, in the land at the edge of the earth. This is not a reference to the outside edge, as you would call it, okay, but the inside edge, I believe. It says, in the land at the edge of the earth, there is a little sun, and the people grow sick with water. The dampness causes a sickness among us, where the teeth become loose in the gums, and the skin peels. Flesh puffs up and holds the marks of fingers. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't meditate on this one as long as I wanted to, but it's interesting that they talk about that. There's this land at the edge of the earth where there's a little sun. And then it says that there's dampness that causes like their teeth to fall out, basically. That's interesting too, because we talked about that when we broke down Slumberland, the movie Slumberland, and we talked about how people dream of their teeth falling out and how it possibly could have a connection and a correlation to ancient times when people didn't need teeth because they didn't need food. They lived off of the energy that's in the atmosphere itself. So their teeth started to fall out. That's a possibility. I don't know. Continues on and says, a house is built Oh, hold on. I got a comment in the chat. Red Cloud Rider says, JayDreamerZ, I just realized what a powerful thing you've put together with the Good Vibe Tribe. Just imagine what could happen if the tribe got together once a year like Burning Man or better. I mean, we're getting it together right now, but in person, I think that would be awesome. Listen, I think that's going to happen. I believe that there are those that I call the Good Vibe Tribe, those who have a spirit of the blue beam. Blue beamers, you can call them whatever you want to. It doesn't matter. It's just a descriptor. It's just a name, right? It's a name tag. There are those of us who are family. There are those of us who are like-minded. We have like energy. We are a big thumbs up family. You know what I mean? Positive. Always hoping, always aspiring, always adding to and trying to contribute. You know what I mean? And I do believe that there will come a time that the Kolbrin Bible references, the actual Bible, the Quran, many ancient books reference that there is a dispersing of that tribe, and there is a getting together of that tribe, and I believe that the day will come. All right, continuing on. Thank you for the comment, but by the way. It says, a house is built and trees take over the roof and plant. Okay, this is describing a place that's near the Garden of Eden. It might be in the Garden of Eden, okay? And it's talking about how fast nature grows in that area. A house is built and trees take over the roof. Plants creep over the walls. Corn is planted and rots, while weeds smother other growing foods. Grayness is everywhere. Even the face of the sun is pale here. Men shiver without heat, and the air is not pure and mixed with water. Wild dogs lurk among the trees to tear the unweary to pieces. Those wild dogs are interesting. I don't think that they're like today's dogs whatsoever. I think they're more like hellhounds and devil dogs and stuff like that, which I'm gonna do another presentation on that in the near future. Wild dogs lurk among the trees to tear the unwary to pieces. There are few stones, and they are covered with slime. Do you see that? Stones are covered in slime. Now, this particular region, they mention various regions, three main ones. There's this one that's like, I forgot what it's called. I think we'll come across it in the future, but it's like this place of like the white stone or the white mountain or the white city, something like that. This other place is the place of blackness and darkness and death and stuff like that. But both of them are located up in the North Pole area. One on one side, one on the other. Anode, cathode, right? So this would be, I want to say, the anode side, okay? The side that is losing all of its energy, basically, and giving it to the cathode side. All right, let's continue on. And that slime is ectoplasm, if that's true, right? We could say that. We could make that connection. There is a race of men with great hairy bodies and the heads of dogs. Sound familiar? Who carry children off to feast on them. Arata, wife of Amora, died in the embrace of one. They have hides that no arrow can pierce. That's super interesting to me. To me, it sounds like a werewolf. Basically, that straight up sounds like a werewolf. But it could also be, like I've talked about this many times, the correlation between the werewolves and the wolf family, or the werewolf families, and the vampires, right? How they may be related to one another, actually. How the werewolves may just be older versions of the ancient gods or the elven race. And that's what they look like when they go past the age of puberty and stuff, and their noses get longer and their teeth look like they're growing out. Their gums might be receding or something. Their ears continue to grow. Their hair starts to develop as they go through puberty and stuff. Could be. Oh, and they have hides that no arrow can pierce. That means they are more, okay, I'm not going to say it means, but it could hint at a different density, right? Being more dense than the atmosphere around them or the objects around them, right? So for example, right now, you're all very dense in substance, okay? The world itself is very dense in substance. But whenever the earth depressurizes, or the atmosphere depressurizes, I should say, things become less dense all over the place. Density lessens all over the place. Now you are coming from the world that is very dense, which means your muscles and your skin and everything about you is strong in comparison to the flimsy world that we're about to go into. Keep that in mind. So that's why, bullets bounce off Superman and stuff like that. All right, continuing on. It says, we long for the welcome omens of the shining arrows of the night. This was just a passing reference to the beams that shoot out worldwide from place to place, different places. Okay, they're spread out, don't get me wrong, but these inner earth energy shoots out, and these are the arrows that shine in the night, and they give them comfort because these are the places of goodness, places of power that led people, the great original lighthouses and light towers. It goes on to say the great secrets and great wisdom are secured for our children. We place them and ourselves in the hands of the sons of fire. We shall leave this place and sail towards Hire, towards the west, where lies the land of white stone. Okay, so basically in the story, they had arrived at what I call the Anode Island, or the Anode Mountain, which is, I believe, it could be cathode, but I'm starting to lean way more towards anode the more I study electricity and stuff. But it's that Anode Island is giving away all of its energy. So it's seen as a place of death, basically. It would be like in the Indiana Jones movie when he chooses the wrong grail, right? It's kind of like that, basically. I mean, you can live there, but it's not the best place to go. So after they visit that island, they leave that island and they go on a journey to its counterpart, which is the land of the white stone, or the White Island, I guess you could call it. All right, continue on. He says, we sailed with a large company towards the west. This is a different west than what you're used to, and had nothing to fear except the whirlpool. For the red men with us knew the way of the waters. The men from inside of the earth are said to be red, just so you know. Those beings who come from the skies are said to be white. Not like me, like real white, like albino white. And the men inside of the earth are said to be red. Excuse me. And the red people knew about the whirlpool. There's a whirlpool. There's an indrawn sea at the North Pole. It has a current that goes around in a circle and it pulls people in. So that's the only thing that they had to fear. And they were going west, right? Not west like infinitely around the earth, but west like as in towards the western extremities, or towards the Pillars of Hercules that lies in the center of the world. Continuing on, it says, ships were divided, and those who wished to set up the Eagle and Serpent went to the harbor of giants in Balharia. The same giants are builders of great temples, and they are 6 cubits tall. 6 cubits tall is about how tall Goliath was in the Bible, if you're wondering, right? David and Goliath. So Goliath, that's about how tall that those giants were said to have been, right? And in the land of copper, once again, another reference to copper and the Copper Mountains. In the land of copper, which was the land of the golden light. Boom, that's another description of the Garden of Eden and the areas therein. Continues on to say, the evil grew in greatness until the land could no longer contain it and had to be purged clean. That's what's happening with our world today, in my perspective, right? I believe that the evil is increasing, the negative energy, negative vibes are increasing in this world, and it will get to the point where it pops and plasma comes in and cleanses the world. Therefore, the revenging dragon was called up out of the heavenly abyss, and it lashed the land with fire and thunder. The whole land was filled with its smoky breath, and men choked to death. So that's the same sky dragon that we've been talking about this entire time, possibly ionized hydrogen that's coming down into our world, interacting with all the substances around it. All right, cool. Moving forward, it says the priests who came from the land of copper, again, right, could make their soul depart from the body at their command and return as they willed. This is astral projection. This is the ability to use the force, okay? This is what we now call in the modern world science fiction and fantasy and make-believe, or ancient reality. Goes on to say, we know about the Lotan and Kabel Kai, designer of houses, who sailed around the edge of the earth. Now I highlighted that purposefully to contrast with the ends of the earth. This says sailed around the edge of the earth. So I'm more inclined to believe that that's actually talking about the outside portions of the earth as opposed to the ends of the earth, which is on the inside of the earth or in the middle. Continuing on, it says they came to the harbor of sorrow. This might be a reference to the Anode Island. if in fact it is an anode in nature. They came to the harbor of sorrow, which lies by the hazy sea, away from the land of mists. So it wouldn't be at the exact center, it would be off to the side, right? Just like we've talked about in some of our other videos. There, great trees grew, huge trees, and smaller trees upon them, and moss hung from them like it did door curtains. It lay near the great shallow waters south of the Isle of Haluj and north of the sea pass. So let me point something out here as far as the location of this anode island. It lay near the great shallow waters south of the isle. So the waters around here are shallow. Here's one possibility as to why the waters are shallow around this particular island. If in fact it is anode in nature, then it is developing underneath it at the bottoms what is known as anode mud, or debris, basically sludge, right? And that sludge builds up until it starts coming towards the surface or whatnot. So it is seen as a very swampy type of area or region of the northern seas, basically. All right, continues to say green pearls are found there. Here's another reference to special pearls, right? Not just the color green and it's a rock and it's a pearl, but light, pearls of light. Many died in the harbor of sorrow, for it was a place with a curse upon it, which caused an evil sickness, as can be expected. Continuing on, it says, the barbarians are still children, and these things do not easily come within their understanding. Because of this, it may be best if they were taught by simple tales, like children, and so brought into the light gradually. So another thing that the Kolbrin Bible does quite often is it talks about these mysteries. It talks about these secrets, and it implores people not to just cast your pearls before swine. You know what I mean? Pearls of light, right? Not to just give these secrets out to just anybody, but to those who have been tried and tested, etc. Now, some might ask the question, and I would too, well, why are you doing that, JayDreamerZ? Right? Why are you just telling everybody all these secrets or whatever for whoever to hear? The reason is because, one, I'm allowed, right? I feel that I have been allowed. And the reason for that is because we live in a time where nobody would believe me anyway. Like we live during a time where people have completely rejected truth. They've completely rejected history and the reality of the world around us and the ancient ways and stuff. So when they hear it, it's automatically fiction to them. You know what I mean? So my channel, if somebody's listening into my channel, either they will be amused by all of the pretty neon lights and fun things I have going on and little cartoon characters and stuff that I purposefully have done for my channel. I mean, it is amusing and it's fun. I like it. So that's my aspect of it. But some people only strive for fun. Some people only strive for self-gratification of the eyes or the body or whatever it may be. Others who are paying attention will get something. They will find a treasure, basically. And that goes for many things. All right. So bringing it to the light gradually, speaking in story form so that people can build bridges, right? So that you can not shock the heck out of people so that they're like, I can't even grasp that. I can't even believe that. I can't conceive of that. That's fiction. I have to use my imagination. You know, we build bridges for people out of sympathy, out of compassion, out of understanding that it's a foreign place, that they're going to be on a journey when we speak with them, right? So we gradually, out of kindness and patience, build a bridge so that they can watch the land start to slowly change and realize that they're on a journey instead of just being instantly transported to some other place and they start freaking out. You know what I mean? Oh, I got 85,000? Are you serious? No way. I got 85,000 subscribers. That's cool. Dang. I don't know. I haven't checked it, but if I do, that'd be pretty sweet. Thank you, Matt Kubis. I appreciate you, man. Margie Wilson, good to see you. All right, cool. Let's jump back into the presentation. The next thing that it says, we've got another passage says 92 generations have to be born. So earlier it said 100. So now this is later on, right? 92 generations have to be born. Then gods and men intermingled will do battle. And there will be a great carnage on that catastrophic day when war is waged in the red-hued darkness amid a mighty blast. That is the time of which it is written, fire shall leap forth from the heart of a stone. That's the sword in the stone. That is the plasma volcano. The plasma shooting up out of the giant cave of saviors or whatnot. And this is the time whenever gods and men fight. What are they fighting over? I believe, I have a theory so far, that they fight over Mount Meru, that there's a battle for Mount Meru, that there are these alien beings that land on Mount Meru, and there are those tribes, the lost tribes, who all make an exodus to Mount Meru. They all get there at the same time. You've got the elven race or the alien race or whatever you want to call them that land there, and then you've got the newcomers who are from there and who are coming back. And so each one is like, you know, who owns this land or whatever, and there seems to be a battle for it. Continuing on, it says, oh, thanks, Amy. Thank you. I appreciate you. It says, may your souls be enlightened by the central light. Now, there's many levels to these teachings, okay? There's a central light of the world, physically, on earth. And there is also a central light inside. Oh, that's in order to find the light that is central to the world, first you have to find the light that is central to you, okay? I can't stress that anymore. It's super important. For all of those of you who are considering, you know, going to Mount Meru one day, or that's a possibility for you. It continues on and says, may all you who assemble between the great pillars, the anode and the cathode, the pillars of Hercules, at the appointed times. Let me read this. Let me start over. Some of this blows my mind when I read it. May your souls be enlightened by the central light. May all of you who assemble between the great pillars at the appointed times be cared for by the Supreme Spirit, as you care for his earthly affairs. May he keep you as you keep his laws. May you receive the grace of enlightenment from the center of the sacred circle. And may an eternal fountain be opened for you, from which your souls may drink and be refreshed. May you receive the gift of everlasting regeneration, right? That's when the blue beam shoots up, and it kills entropy. Everything is flipped around backwards. Everything right now is full of entropy. Entropy is a state of matter when it's continuously decaying. Everything has to have balance, right? So does entropy. So there must arise a time when entropy's opposite is introduced into our world. The opposite of that is regeneration. Deep. Men forget the days of the destroyer. Only the wise know where it went and that it will return in its appointed hour. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, that we have forgotten the plasma apocalypse and that at the appointed hour, it will return. It is told in the courtyards that there was a time when heaven and earth were not apart, like we've talked about. Continues on and says, it is written that God once walked the earth with man and dwelt within a cave above a garden where man labored. Once again, there's a mountain, has a cave inside of it, at the top, and it's in the garden. It's in the Garden of Eden. It's also where Adam was said to have been buried, and many other prophets and people of times past. In the shallow lakelands among the mud. Some of you are picking up on the mud, right? In the shallow lakelands among the mud, out beyond the great plain of reeds. You see that? You see that right there? The great plain of reeds. I believe this is related to the Sea of Reeds, that there was a sea of reeds in this marshy, swampy area around the Anode Mountain. And that would be the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, basically. At the place of many flowers bedecking plant and tree, where trees grew beards and had branches like ropes, which bound them together, for the ground would not support them. They were butterflies, like birds and spider. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me read that again. There were, in addition to these huge, giant, ancient trees that looks like Dagobah from Star Wars, right? In addition to these huge trees, there were butterflies like birds. Like that big butterflies, okay? And spiders as large as the outstretched arm or arms of a man. I can't even show you how big that is, okay? Spiders this big. The birds of the air and the fishes of the waters had different colors, hues, which dazzled the eyes, and they lured men to destruction. Even insects fed on the flesh of men. To some of you, this might sound like it's straight out of King Kong or whatever. World is a stage. Oh, you just became a member. Thanks for your support. Super appreciate you. Let me send you some love in the chat. Here's some hearts for you. Awesome. Let's all welcome World is a Stage. How exciting. How it's exciting. It's your debut. That's so cool. All right. All right, let's continue on for just a sec. So basically, this is talking about how everything closer to Hyperborea, closer to the Garden of Eden, grows to huge sizes. Insects, animals, plants, all these things. And not only do they grow to huge sizes, but they grow quickly and they regenerate. So they don't grow old like we do. Goes on to say, the pillars of the netherworld were unstable. Same pillars that shoot up and hold up our sky retract and they go down into Sheol, or into the underworld or the netherworld. The pillars of the netherworld were unstable. In a great night of destruction, the land fell into an abyss and was lost forever. Also, sounds just like Atlantis, right? When the earth became light, the next day, man saw man driven to madness, plasma possession. All was gone. Men clothed themselves with skins of beasts and were eaten by wild beasts. Things with clashing teeth used them for food. A great horde of rats devoured everything so that man died of hunger, and the brain eaters hunted men down and slew them. They're the freaking brain eaters, okay? Now, I'm not saying it's zombies, but, you know. Anyways, I don't know. Possibly not. It could be some strange form of phantazoid, but still, isn't that interesting? God, so interesting. They covered their dead with potter's clay and hardened it, for it was not their custom to place their dead in boxes. This is also talking about these strangers. That's weird to me too. I always thought it was weird. Why are we putting dead people in boxes in the ground? That seems like a huge waste and seems to defeat the purpose, especially if you're hoping that your dead ones come back to life. Like, boom, 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 boom. How are they going to get out? You know what I mean? They used to put dead people in like caves so they could walk out when the time comes, or in little houses that had doors that open from the inside. You know what I mean? Now they just stick them in boxes and put them a bunch of dirt on top of them. That's weird to me too. Anyways, it goes on to say, in the center of the land was the great flat-topped mountain of God. Flat-topped. Because it's a volcano. It's a plasma volcano. Interesting stuff. All right, continuing on. It says they used strange fire from the netherworld, plasma, which was but slightly separated from them. So that's pretty interesting too. It's talking once again about the illuminated ones, the shining ones. Those who had the shine were magical, basically. And you could see their aura, essentially. Like when they walked, kind of like that dude in, what was it, Pitch Black? I can't remember the name of that movie, but it's that one with Vin Diesel when he's got the eyes that light up and he fights that dude who like moves, but like he's got like this weird shadow effect or whatever. It's kind of like that, I guess, but with plasma. All right, anyways, in olden times, when men lived in the ground. Now, this is super interesting, and I think I took some notes about this further on too, but it also talks about the reality, the very real reality of the legend of dwarves. It's actually, as a matter of fact, straight up says dwarves are real. Well, we might come to that later. In olden times, when men lived in the ground, there came the Great One, whose name is hidden, the son of Hem, the son of the sun, the chief of the guardians of the mysteries, master of rights and the spoken word, judge of disputes, advocate of the dead, the interpreter of the gods and the father of fishermen. From the west, from beyond Mandi, came the Great One, arrayed in robes of black linen, Mount Meru, and wearing a headdress of red. The depressurization point, the red circle in the sky. All right, continuing on. Who taught that beyond the visible is the invisible, beyond the small is the smaller, and beyond the great is the greater, and all things are linked together in one. Who taught that? I'm pretty sure I taught that like a couple times on my channel. At least I shared that. It's not my invention or anything, but I have revealed that. That's the fractal verse. That's what we're talking about. We can look down and you'll see infinitely. If you had a microscope that was like the world's most powerful one, and you could see the tiniest thing, and then a million years later they had another microscope, you know what I mean, further down the line that could see 100 times even further, it doesn't stop. It's fractal. It continues on. It's not actually smaller. It just seems to be in comparison to where we are. It's infinite worlds. It's infinite energy and experiences, etc. Just like those things that are outside of our world above us, looking down onto us, are much bigger. Okay? That's why all of those creatures that drop down out of the sky, according to ancient customs and religions and traditions and whatnot, they're huge. They're gigantic. They live in the macrocosm. Continuing on, it says, who brought the sacred eye from the distant land and the stone of light made of water, by which men see God, and the firestone, which gathers the light of the sun before the great shrine. I think this is a reference to Mount Meru and the depressurization hole in the sky. The stone of light, that's the sorcerer's stone. The stone of light and the firestone were stolen in the days of the disaster, and no one knows their resting place. Therefore, the land is empty. You'll see this in the movies all the time. It's the same story being told over and over again, that some sacred jewel or some sacred central heart of some god or some rock or something important, usually one that glows or is very bright, has been stolen and must be returned, etc., right? That's like the plot of like a billion movies, okay? That's because that's the plot of your world that you live in right now. The light has been stolen. The light has gone down into the inner recesses of the earth, and it must be restored in order to, bring about the golden age. It raged across the heavens in the days of wrath. Now this is talking about the sky and the destroyer above. It raged across the heavens in the days of wrath, and this was its likeness. So this is what it looks like. What does the plasma look like when it comes down? I've wondered, right? It was as a billowing cloud of smoke, enwrapped in a ruddy glow, not distinguishable in joint or limb. Its mouth was an abyss from which came flame, smoke, and hot cinders, right? So this is ancient man describing the plasma that is coming down into our world, where all of its appendages look just like the body, right? It says that not distinguishable in joint or limb. All of it looks just like all of it. It's a little fractal version of itself. So all of its little arms and stuff that stick out of it look like little versions of itself. It's plasma. Like a tree. When ages pass, central laws operate upon the stars in the heavens. Their ways change. There is a movement and restlessness, and they're no longer constant, and a great light appears redly in the skies. When blood drops upon the earth, the destroyer will appear, and mountains will open up which belch forth fire and ashes. Trees will be destroyed, and all living things will be engulfed. Waters will be swallowed up by the land, and the seas will boil. Now, something that this reminded me of as far as the red light appearing, the blood dropping down from the earth, the destroyer appearing. I just watched a movie. I have not shared it with you guys, and I might not actually, because it's very risque, very adult subject or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but it's called Glorious. There's a movie called Glorious, and I watched it last night. It's actually super good. If you can get past like the base imagery and some of, it's like watching a Seth Rogen movie, basically. There's a lot of good breadcrumbs, but it's very, very crude in what it shares. But that's what that kind of reminded me of. The waters boil too because, gases are being released from inside of the earth, as well as the earth itself depressurizing, and that has an effect on the water, as well as the electricity that's flowing from anode to cathode that churns the ocean, etc. It says that the heavens will burn brightly and redly. As a matter of fact, they will. The author says the sky will turn red. There will be a copper hue over the face of the land. Now, copper is more of like a golden kind of a color, right? So you have your golden age. Followed by a day of darkness. The new moon will appear and break up and fall. Okay, so the new moon will appear, the moon will appear, it will break. Another prophecy to the moon breaking, just like in Islam, and it will fall. A great abode from the heavens falls down to our world. The moon itself, the moonfall, right? The people, that's because I think that the moon is super close. Okay, I mean, I don't have time to even talk about what I want to talk about, but basically the moon is not super far away and it will one day fall down. The people will scatter in madness, plasma possession. They will hear the trumpet and the battle cry of the destroyer, and they will seek refuge within dens of the earth because there's nowhere else really to hide. You know what I mean? There's a tempest, winds are blowing, electricity's everywhere. There's phantazoids and monsters and stuff. And because I'm saying all these negative things, or things that could be perceived as negative or scary, I also want to balance that out just for a quick second, aside from whatever's on the screen. And I want to share with you that I'm going to do a video on the good news. Okay, I've talked about the good news many times, but in the near future, I'm going to do a video about what is the good news of the end of the world. I do not want newcomers to come to my channel and think that this is all just terrifying, that I'm just going to share with you all the scary stuff, not give you any hope, not give you any glory to look forward to, any treasures that are in sight. I'm going to make a video to help us see further down so that we can see why we go through these trials and tribulations, because there is a reward on the other side. And I'm not just talking about dying and waking up in heaven. I'm talking about actual rewards in the world that we live in now, if we can make it through the hard times. Okay. So there is good news and it abounds. We'll talk about that pretty soon. All right. Continuing on. It says that the people will scatter in madness. They will hear the trumpet, etc. Their courage will flow from them like water from a broken pitcher. They will be eaten up in flames of wrath and consumed by the breath of the destroyer. Now, also later on in the Kolbrin Bible, many instances, it basically references that this happens to bad people. Okay, so I believe that bad things happen to everybody. Okay, but there are certain times when specifically people are singled out because of the energy that they have. We'll talk about that more. It says, thus it was in the days of heavenly wrath, which have gone, and thus it will be in the days of doom when it comes again. The time of its coming and going are known unto the wise. There are the signs and the times that shall precede the destroyer's returns. 110 generations shall pass into the west, and nation will rise and fall. Men will fly in the air, and birds will swim as birds. Men will fly in the air as birds and swim in the sea as fishes. Men will talk peace with one another. Hypocrisy and deceit shall have their day. Women will be as men and men will be as women. Passion will be a plaything of man. And these are all harbingers and signs and omens of the things that happen before the destroyer comes. Times of the destroyed return. So interesting things to check out. All right, I'm going to move forward. Then, oh, hold on, I'm missing some stuff in the chat. Angel Lovebud, shout out to you. Good to see you. And Hops just popped in and says, I just posted a question to Jason related to this content and will repost it here. I recently discovered something after researching the Kolbrin Bible. Synchronicity. Okay, my bad. I think you just kind of included my name, so it highlighted on my side. All right, no worries. We got Virginia, who says, Jay said to learn to meditate. Yeah, learn to meditate. It will keep you centered and calm. Your future. Yes, very good. Thank you, Virginia, for sharing that in the chat. I super appreciate it. All right, let's continue on because we don't have much time left. Then men will be at ill at ease with their hearts. Okay, this is talking about the time that we're in now, basically, in my opinion. They will seek. Let me start over. At that time, men will be ill at ease in their hearts. They will seek. They know not what, and uncertainty and doubt will trouble them. They will possess great riches, but be poor in spirit. That's many of us, by the way. Even if you're poor, you still would appear to be rich in comparison to how people lived so long ago, okay? Then the heavens will tremble, and the earth will move. Men will quake in fear, And while terror walks with them, the heralds of doom will appear. They will come softly as thieves to the tombs. Men will not know them for what they are. Men will be deceived, and the hour of the destroyer is at hand. So this is all the energy that's building up, and it seems to me, okay, I'm just off the top of my head right now, but it seems that before the destroyer comes, before the apocalypse happens, and the world depressurizes, that the energy builds up, and the energy that is in our world right now becomes amplified, and most of the energy that is in our world right now is a remnant of the red plasma that had come in beforehand and got cut off. And the blue beam, all that good energy, retracted. And so the world was the plaything of the red spirits, the red plasma, okay? Where was I going with that? I forgot. Let me move forward. All right. Excuse me. All right. It goes on to say, how long will your vigil last, O mortal men who wait without understanding? Where will you hide yourselves in the dread days of doom, when the heavens shall be torn apart and the skies rent in twain, in the days when children will turn gray-headed? See, that's interesting too. Like, that's a reference to, there is a reverse allusion or reference to the Children of the Corn, right? The Children of the Corn, the movie, represents stuff like this. When the children turn gray-headed, could that be because we're so advanced in our aging process and that entropy has increased so much that we're almost old and decrepit upon birth? It's a possible reference to that. Or there's another possibility too. There are probably many, but I've got two. The other one is radiation. Radiation coming in and inundating our world, causing mutations and other things, as well as people's hair turning white. So that's what I'm leaning towards. All right, cool. Let's see. Moving forward, there will be a great body of fire, the glowing head with many mouths and eyes ever changing. Terrible teeth will be seen in formless mouths, and a fearful dark belly will glow redly from the fires inside. So there's another description of Cthulhu, or the god that's resting above, the red plasma that comes down into our world, and the opening where it comes out of. It also says, where are we? Hold on. Damn, we're about halfway through. We still got a while to go. We might take a break. Okay, in about maybe 20 minutes, we might take a break. It will either that or I could continue it. Let me know in the chat. What would you guys rather do? Do you think that we should take a break and have a part 2? Or do you think that we should just pull an all-nighter and just kind of keep going? I'm pretty sure most people are going to pick keep going. But the decision is mine. I don't know. Let me know. All right, it continues on and says, it will be a vast, sky-spanning form enwrapping the earth. It's talking about the plasma whenever this happens. Burning with many different colors within wide open mouths. These will descend or come down to sweep across the face of the land. So plasma is darting in and out of various conduits and roads and waterways and stuff like that, engulfing all of the land in the yawning jaws. The greatest warriors will charge against it in vain. The fangs will fall out, and lo, they are terror-inspiring things of cold, hardened water. Great boulders will be hurled down upon men, crushing them into red powder. Like I said, boulder origin theory, my boulder origin theory is that they are created in the sky, right? Whenever all that mud and muck and debris and sand and dust and all kinds of stuff are up there floating around in the sky with the world's water supply, and then plasma is introduced to electrify it all, yeah, petrification basically, and it rains down rocks out of the sky. As the great salt waters rise up in its train and roaring torrents pour towards the land, even the heroes among mortal men will be overcome with madness. So, another good reason to protect your noggin, to protect your mind, okay, and your energy from what is to come, because it can be overwhelming. I would not just trust in, your ability to just stand and fight, okay? If you think that you're just going to fight against the spirits that inundate this world, many people will become possessed, basically. Okay, I knew the chat was going to be divided on whether we should go or not. I am feeling like I'm starting to lose my voice, so we might actually take a break and do a part 2 tomorrow. I'm not sure. We'll see how I feel. Plus, I have to call I get to call my son at in a little bit, so I don't want to miss that. So I don't want to be rude and be like, making a phone call while you guys are waiting. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what's on my mind, just to be honest. Where did I get the Kolbrin Bible? I downloaded it on the internet. It's available. All right, continuing on. People will become plasma possessed. The doom shape. Another, they call it the frightener. They call it the destroyer. They call it the doom shape. The doom shape, called the destroyer in Egypt, was seen in all the land thereabouts. In color, it was bright and fiery. In appearance, changing and unstable. It twisted about itself like a coil, like water bubbling into a pool from an underground supply, and all men agree that it was a most fearsome sight. It was not a great comet or a loosened star, being more like a fiery body of flame. So some people might mistake this for a comet just because it's up there in the sky in the heavens, but it's not. It's altogether different. You will recognize it, or some of us will recognize it when we see it. It's plasma. Its movements on high were slow because it swirled in the manner of smoke, and it remained close to the sun whose face it hid. There was a bloody redness about it, which changed as it passed along its course. Is this not right up, you know what I mean? Like, this is what we've been talking about this for quite some time, and it's definitely describing it in the exact same way that we've been describing it, and how I've been talking about it, right? That plasma is so far away when it's way up there in the sky, but it's gigantic. But to us, it doesn't look that gigantic, but it's so far away, it's moving slowly. It looks like it's going in slow motion, you know what I mean? But it's really not. So it's like a giant worm in the sky, basically. It goes on to say, the dark smoke filled the heavens. The heavens bowed over the earth, and a great howl came to the ears of living men, born to them upon the wings of the wind. So there's going to be a loud screaming, a loud singing, a loud resonance, a loud vibration. There's going to be a sound that relates with this depressurization. It was the cry of the Dark Lord, the master of dread. Thick clouds of fiery smoke passed before him, and there was an awful hail of hot stones and coals of fire. The doom shape thundered sharply in the heavens and shot out bright lightnings. This is all electromagnetic in nature, and this particular passage perfectly goes along with the story of Carlin Maggie, which I just did a video about and I've referenced a couple of times. I apologize for those of you who, really didn't like my accent in that video. It was fun. I just wanted to do it for fun. So if you enjoyed it, I'm glad. If not, see past the accent. Try to hear past the accent so that you can understand the story, or you can read it online too. But Carlin Maggie is an ancient folklore and fairy tale about this witch who challenged the devil, and the devil hurled hot rocks out of the sky at her, etc. It's very, very much along the same lines. Then a voice like 10,000 trumpets, as we've talked about, was heard over the wilderness. And before its burning breath, the flames parted. The whole of the land moved, and mountains melted. The sky itself roared like 10,000 lions in agony, and bright arrows of blood sped back and forth across its face. The earth swelled up like bread upon the hearth. One thing I wanted to point out was mountains melting, okay? Be careful, right, that we don't apply our limited knowledge of the modern world and what we consider to be normal to those things that have happened in the far-reaching past when conditions were different. Can mountains melt? I think so, but there's different methods and appearances of something that is melting. Not everything that melts is melting because of fire. Not everything that's melting is melting because it's hot. You can just vibrate a big old hill of sand or something and it will appear to melt. It will just dissipate as it goes down because of the shaking. It's liquefaction, so it's causing it to tear itself apart, basically, right? Also, things can have looser bonds electrically, that the bonds, energy can inundate an object and can change the electrical bonds and the chemical bonds that it has within itself, okay? Causing those bonds to be strengthened and therefore petrified and becoming rock or stone, or loosened and becoming malleable and workable and more plastic-like. Continuing on. Thank you everybody for your support in the chat. Totally appreciate it. Continuing on, it says, the doom shape is like a circling ball of flame which scatters. Oh, let me put it over here. Which scatters small fiery offspring in its train. So the doom shape, which is the circle in the sky, the all-seeing eye, etc., the depressurization point, is a circling ball of flame because it's got plasma coming out of it, just like Medusa, and it scatters small fiery offspring. That means babies. That means replication. It's replicating itself. That's exactly what many of these ancient sleeping gods or world destroyers are said to be able to do, is to make little tiny copies of themselves and send those down into the lower reaches or the surface world, basically, right? Just like Cthulhu, he has little Cthulhu babies that look just like him, but they're tinier, basically, right? It's plasma, and it's branching out and getting smaller and smaller as it comes down. Fiery offspring in its train, or behind it, basically, or in its path. It covers about a fifth part of the sky and sends writhing snake-like fingers, the fingers of God, right, down to earth. So how big is it? If you were to use your imagination, imagine walking out into the daytime sky or the nighttime sky, looking at all of it in its glory and dividing it into 5 sections, right? One of those 5 sections will be how big that circle in the sky will look. This is how big Nibiru will appear to be to people who believe in Nibiru, okay? It'll be the hole in the sky, basically, and it's 1/5 as big as the entire sky, according to the Kolbrin Bible. And it sends snake-like fingers down to the earth. Before it, the sky appears frightened, and it breaks up, and it scatters away. That's the physical portion to the dome or the roof of our world, breaking up in places. Midday is no brighter than night. It spawns a host of terrible things. These are things said of the destroyer of the old records. Read them with a solemn heart, knowing that the doom shape has its appointed time, and it will return. It would be foolish to let them go unheeded. Now men say, such things are not destined for our days. May the great God above grant that this shall be so. But come the day surely will, and in accordance with his nature, man will be unprepared. Oh, Ken. Hey, thanks, Ken. I super appreciate you. All right, so let me recap this particular verse. This has a lot of stuff in it. The doom shape is a circling ball of flame that's a depressurization point, which leaves little versions of itself that come down into the world. That's plasma splitting and splitting and splitting as it comes down like lightning does. It also releases or opens up a doorway for those heavenly creatures to come down into our world, which are these terrible monsters, etc. And it will return on its appointed time. They make a point of saying, hey, this will happen again. Okay. And they're not like, once a long time ago, this happened and that was crazy, right? And like, that's it. No, it's like, hey, this happened once. It's definitely going to happen again. That's what this whole book is about. It's about this book starts off dedicating itself to people in the future. Just like when I talk to future people in my live streams, hello, everyone in the future. Hello, future JayDreamerZ. Hey, high five. Let's high five myself. Fa-pow. There we go. So I just gave my future self a high five one of these days, I'm sure. So other people are going to high five too. High five to all you, okay? High five. Yes, yes. I'm catching all of them. Pow! High five. Thank you. All right, cool. Anyways, let's just go. Let's move ahead. We don't have much time. Fear walked the land. Women, now check this out. Women became barren with terror. They could not conceive, and those with child aborted. All men closed up within themselves. Let me translate this. In the near future, people will not be able to have babies. right? And those that do have babies, unfortunately, many of them will abort those children. Now, there will be anomalies and exceptions of people who illegally procreate and make babies and stuff. But there are many references to this throughout pop culture. The one that comes to my mind, I can't remember the name of that show, but there's this really good show about in the future how people can't have babies and only a few of them can. And they basically force them into like being sexual slaves, and they dress like nuns, but they wear red. Does anybody know what TV show that's called? It's really good. Handmaiden's Tale? Is that what it is? Something like that. I forget. But anyways, it's a direct reference to that. Okay. And that's not the only reference. There's many movies that talk about this. All right. Many breadcrumbs of truth that the day will come when the earth has had enough. And it's like, oh, you want to keep on making stuff like that? No. Stops it. Stops us. Closes up the wombs. And anyone that can get pregnant will be seen as like a very special treasure, basically. It goes on to say, oh, also, I want to add to that, okay? Dirt Road Boys. Hey, what's up, Dirt Road Boys? Good to see you. I want to add to this, okay? In addition to this, I believe that after the world depressurizes, we are regenerated, just like we've talked about. And if it's true, if we are, or if we do become survivors, become regenerated in the time of the blue beam, in the time of the red sky, in the world of magic, if that's true, think about this. It's literally reversing your aging process. It is putting you to your most virile point, okay? And it's changing your DNA. It's changing your skin. It's changing the elastin of your skin and your, what do you call it? All the other parts of your skin and stuff. It's reverse aging you. It's the fountain of youth. If that's true, what are the implications? One implication is that it will take much longer to be able to give birth, because you will go through another period of puberty. You will have to, your time of puberty will be extended. It will be pushed way far out, okay? Because you'll be a child for like 100 years, all right? You won't be able to get pregnant, and you won't be able to get others pregnant, okay? So that might also be another reference to that. And then after that time comes, people might be able to start making babies and stuff again. Anyways, moving forward. In the glow of the destroyer, the earth was filled with redness. In the glow of the destroyer, the earth was filled with redness. That's because the red light comes in, turns everything red. All right, this is the point at which I want to first say thank you, to Ronna Lee Caton for $5 out of their own money. I'm honored. Thank you. Super honored. Thank you so much. That was yours, and now it's mine. I mean, at least half of it, because I'm sure YouTube takes some of it. But sincerely, to everybody, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. You don't have to do that, and you do, some of you, you know what I mean? And for those of you who don't feel bad. It's totally fine. Just watching my video makes me money. You know what I mean? Hitting the like button makes me and my family money so that we can live. So thank you. I appreciate all of your views, all the likes, all the sharing, all the subscribing and stuff. I could not be more humbled. Many people have also kind of pointed out that like I've been looking a little weary lately. I'm going through my own struggles. And I've been working a lot, basically. Okay. I haven't slept a lot. I've had so much on my mind lately that my thoughts are just spinning, and I'm trying to change certain parts of like my diet and what I do with my time and stuff. So it's reflecting on my face. Another reason why sometimes I use filters, which I don't have on right now. There's a slight filter on here, but it's just to match reality so it doesn't look all weird. But yeah, sometimes I'll throw on a filter if I feel like I look like crap. So that's totally true. But yeah, it's because I'm expending a lot of energy lately, studying, getting things prepared just to do one live stream, any live stream that I do. For example, I gotta make a thumbnail, and that usually my thumbnails take me about at least 30 minutes to create, sometimes more. I've got to put up this green screen behind me. I have to literally stand on this chair that I'm sitting on and reach up to my ceiling and put it on the hooks. And I've got to turn on like 12 different lights in here so that it all looks good and I'm not too shadowy, or all kinds of stuff, right? And that's just preparation that I do right before every live stream. And I try to make it on time and stuff too, right? So there's a lot of work that goes into it. So I've been kind of tired lately, but it's all good. I like it. I'm enjoying the success stuff. Lady Luke's gave me $20 of her own money. Thank you. And says, great talk, Jay. We started reading the Kolbrin Bible last night before bed, so it's extra interesting. Oh, sweet. I'm excited for you. Thank you. Once again, appreciate you. Also, we got Matt Kubis. Matt Kubis, hold on. Let me give Lady Luke her moment here. Thank you all so very much. I appreciate you. Matt Kubis also donated and gave me $5. That's what donation is. It means you gave me your money. And that money is energy. Okay. All of our money. I'm rambling. I'm going to stop. Thank you. I'm just trying to say thank you. That's all. Thank you. I appreciate you. Val, check you out. Says, you are amazing and your effort does not go unseen. I am amazing at times, Val. Okay. I have my shortcomings. I have my times of struggles and trials and tribulations, but I know what you're saying. And right now I accept. Thank you. I appreciate it. You're amazing too. Every single one of you, man, you can flourish like no other. I can't even make a Zoom call. I know technology is crazy, right? All right, cool. I can't get to all the other ones because I do have to wrap things up. So I have decided we're going to cut it short. This is part 1. Okay. So tune in next time. I'm not exactly sure when it might be. It could be tomorrow. I'm not sure. I haven't really planned this out. I thought we were going to get rid of all this tonight. I thought we were going to be able to go over it all, but we're like only halfway done. Less than halfway done, actually. So let's call this part 1. And I'm just going to say thank you to all of you. You're so great. And until next time, until then, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
So hard to fade away. I try so hard to fade away, but something's forcing me to stay. It'd be easier for me if I turn away to flee. Oh, but there's something holding on, the way of being long gone. There's so many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Far too many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. I know I should have done this, should have quit this long ago. Can't stand another heartbreak, but it's time to let it go. It'd be easier for me if I turn away to flee. Oh, but there's something holding on, the way of being long gone. There's so many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Far too many ways to escape, but I guess it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up. Time to wake up, time to wake up, baby. Time to wake up, time to wake up.
vast multiverse.
Your powers collide.
Live